Hello, 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 hello. I am Grandmaster Dennis Borosh, and you're watching the Chess Sweep channel. Now, our theme of the day is going to be the Grand Prix attack, which is a specific beast of the Sicilian. Not quite the Najdorf, but quite like a dangerous sideline that's beloved by many. But before I get into it, as we're going to have an interactive lesson about it, let me call out the wonderful, wonderful Chatterino. Hello there, Super Chess Pro. Hey there, Vampire Chicken. Gaborovich. And last but not least, Rediban. How is it going, everybody? So today I felt it's time to get into the Grand Prix and learn the ins and outs of that opening. But first off, let's start with a history lesson. Do you guys know who started the Grand Prix attack? If not, worry not. We're going to get there and I'm going to tell you what happened and how it became so extremely popular. Mostly between 91 and the 2000s. So chat, here is your moment to shine. While I pull up the study. Okay. Public, obviously. Okay. No, this is the Grand Prix attack, of course. And add a new chapter. This is going to be a game between McShane and Wojtasek. Hello, my book. Good morning. So these are young kids right now. They are obviously grown up and in the top 100 of the world. Put it mildly, Wojtasek became the second of Anand. McShane was also pretty close in qualifying in Isle of Man. So if you think about it, this is an interesting game. Now, you might ask, why do we start with this one? Well, because as this is a game between prodigies, I felt this is a good feel of what can happen here. Hello, Big B. So e4, c5, knight c3, d6. Knight c3 is the start of two openings, namely the Close Sicilian and the Grand Prix. Now, even in the early 80s, the Najdorf was big, so they had no idea or not sure what to do against it. There are many, many dangerous lines. Bishop c4, favored by Mr. Bobby Fischer, and Bishop g5, which was played in the Spassky-Fischer matches. Now, seeing this loads of theory, they thought, maybe it's just time to look for alternatives. So they thought of knight c3, d6. But again, before I get into this, let me show you a little bit of an interesting detail. c4, e5. I know you're asking, what does c4, e5 has to do with it? Well, the thing that it has to do with it is the fact that white is playing a reversed Sicilian. Knight c3, knight c6, but with up a tempo, because white has this extra move for a g3. Bishop c5, bishop g2, d6, knight f6, castle, castle, d3, h6, knight d5. And at first look, this looks completely different from the usual positions. But you're wrong. In fact, Black is playing some sort of a reversed Grand Prix. Now you can play it with f5 and you can play it with knight f6. Both is playable. And here an important maneuver that you will see in the games. This knight takes d5, c takes d5, and knight d4. This knight surprisingly is never trapped because there's always a square it can run to. And if they exchange, there is this c7 pawn weakness, but after, let's say, e3, bishop b6, that is always guarded by this bishop, and it's very hard to break through. And on the other hand, f5, f4 is coming and is a way of attacking. Hello there, a 1952 tops. So keep this one in mind. This is a good reminder. This knight d4 idea might be very useful in your Grand Prix knowledge. But okay, let's go back to the game. e4, knight c3. So already I'm pretty sure Maxine was familiar with Wojtaszek's religious ways of playing the Najdorf. So he goes knight c3, d6, f4. So let's stop here for a split second. And let me ask you, chat. Who do you think is better right now? And what are the consequences of this f4 move? Because whenever you push your pawns, those always have consequences. No question about it. So how would you rate your chances? What will be the fight about? What's your thought, chat? Well, got to look out for this diagonal, definitely. So the king got a little bit weakened. What is the positives of f4 though? White has a pawn duo, yeah. So it's interesting that we always talk about these four squares. And we never talk about peripheral pawns that support. Because like if e5 happens, fe is always there to ruin black's structure. So these peripheral pawns actually matter a lot because they take away critical squares. And if you think about it, white should be a little better. Well, maybe because white is white and has the extra move, but maybe for the fact that white has a little bit more control of the center. Has one pawn in there and has one pawn kind of stopping e5 from happening. Although black has fighting chances, of course, because the d4 square is taken by the c5 pawn. So, g6, knight f3, bishop g7. Bishop b5 check. Now, that's not the only move here. The other one is bishop c4, attacking the f7 square. Check is also an idea. So, we're still in the beginning phase of the game. Everybody wants to develop. Black is in not a big danger, because in two moves, black is going to be castled. So the chance to mate black early is unlikely. Bishop d3 is not really a good move. Why? Well, you're blocking your bishop in on c1, which is a useful piece, especially if we manage to exchange it on h6, as we'll see in some future games. So bishop b5 is a way of going. Luke plays this way, bishop d7. And the big question is, should we exchange on d7 or not? And I know, early questions, but these questions are important to answer if you want to play the Grand Prix. Do we want to take Do we want to avoid exchanges? Why did we even check on b5? So whenever you're trying to answer a rhetorical question, and whenever you're trying to figure out the meaning of it, you can't just say, okay, I'll take. You're just stating the obvious, and that does not help. Rediban is saying, it takes away the d7 square for the knight. That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, so whenever white plays bishop c4, the biggest issue white is facing is e6, knight e7, and d5 ideas. But whenever you check on b5, go here, bishop c4, this bishop is blocking the view of the queen. So in fact, these little moves are really powerful if done right. So yes, of course you can take on d7, but that doesn't really have a big point. You just exchanged pieces. And as we talked before, with every exchange, the one who has less space is enjoying their time. So black has a little less space as we talked about it. So exchanges does favor black here. Therefore, bishop c4 is an exclamation mark worthy move, because e6, knight e7, and d5 will take extra time, and this bishop on d7 is rather ugly. Now this does not mean that bishop c4 immediately is a bad move. In fact, we're going to look at that games that feature bishop c4. But bishop b5, bishop d7, bishop c4 is a crafty idea, putting pressure on f7 and also hindering d5. Drum and Chocolate, thank you for following. Knight c6, d3. So again, we need to take a look at what's going on. Can black play knight f6 here? That's a big question. Let's try to answer that. Let's put our thinking cap on and figure that out. So this game was played in 2011. So probably not a Bundesliga game. So knight f6, e5. Good start, Gaborovich. But whenever we're getting into details and fighting positions, we have to answer what happens if black takes and goes knight g4. So chess is concrete. It is very important to have an articulate idea. So when Gaborovich says knight f6 meets with e5, I think, and white gains the big control in the center, that's good. But then you've got to prove it. In this sense, chess is much like math. First, you have to have a hypothesis. But second of all, you've got to prove your hypothesis. If you can't prove it, tough luck. You're not going to win the game. So we've got to answer what happens if black takes the pawn and tries to gang on the e5 pawn with the knight and the bishop. So say takes on e5, f takes e5, knight g4. Instinctively, there's a very strong move here. So just a reminder, this bishop is actually defending. So takes, knight g5. What if I move my king away? That looks a little dicey. It might even work. It's a bit too dicey. E6, of course. And after fe, castles, these are ruined pawns. And white is definitely much better here. So black can't really go knight f6. Again, one of those final points of this maneuver. Not only black cannot go this e6 d5 way, can't even play knight f6 because of e5 and e6 threats. Very well done, chat. So if that's not possible, black will need to get rid of this guy on c4, knight a5. But knight a5 does something in a negative way. Mostly, it's not a developing move, it's losing time. But again, we're at crossroads. What should we do here? Should we move the bishop away? Should we not? So whenever you get these questions in your game and in general, always think about the principles of chess. What has white done right? What does black done wrong? So white took the center, check. What else is almost there? Almost. You're almost castled. So those are the positives. White is almost castled. Let's talk about the black side. Black played in the previous moves bishop d7, knight c6, and knight a5. How does that bode if we're talking chess principles? Is that the way you're supposed to play the game of chess? Chat, wakey. Moving the knight twice, exactly. That's a good point. And again, sometimes chess is just comparing stuff. White is almost castled. What about black? Black is still 2 moves away from castling. So, if black needs 2 more moves to castle, what should we be doing? Should we play bishop b3? Or should we castle? If we note that the black king is still stuck in the middle. Vigby says castles. Gaborovich says bishop b3 seems too slow. Attacking, says A1952. So of course castles. Taking obviously is bad because they take and there is no attack. Castles. If bishop b3, black I think gets the time to go knight f6 and castles and can always take on a b3. Castles. Again, these moves are not that hard if you just follow the principles of chess. What did we do? We counted, okay, we have extra pawn in the center, check. We're done with that. We put our king into safety, check. What is going on with our opponent king? It's still in the middle, so let's go attacking. On the other hand, it's true that Wojtaszek will double our pawns and will get the bishop there. But we give that in exchange for attacking chances. Knight h6, queen e1, knight takes c4, d takes c4. So again, let's stop here and wonder. Right now, we've got a good central control for the bishop pair. We own the d5 square, literally, Marozzi style. We've got really good development. So right now, we just need to devise a good plan. G-Space says, oh, I like this one. I play Grand Prix, but I can't stay. We'll have to watch it later. Well, hope you'll have fun watching it later. And have a good day as well. So, we already own the d5 square. We have a center. We're castled. Black did not castle. That should be a hint. That should be a hint. Also, this bishop is not working full-time on c1. So we might want to activate it. What should be the big plan here for white? Does e1 prevent triple pawns? That's a good question. So it was possible to give white triple pawns. On the other hand, that g7 bishop would be missing, and if this bishop ever lands on h6 or gets its hand on an open diagonal, which is not that easy, but it is possible, then black will be in big danger. And also it's very tough to get to these pawns as it's a closed position. Now this would be a total train wreck if this would be open. If there wouldn't be a c pawn, then it would be gone in seconds. Pawns would just be chopped off. But because it's a closed position, this is not such a big deal here. One of those rare occasions, actually. So Gaborovich says, if I have two knights, my first idea is to close the center, but maybe I want now to attack with e5. So e5 is a very decent idea, trying to open it up in front of the king. That's idea number one. Again, one of the things when we're thinking of big plans, come up with ideas, look for better ones. AKA Paul Karras. Follow your thought process, look for more ideas. E5 is a good start. Let's get into this. Let's find more ideas. Your favorite pizza is saying Queen h4. Okay. What is Queen h4 preparing to do? Random Move says, when they play Queen e1, they want to bring pressure on the king side. Yeah, that's the plan. But what is Queen h4 trying to achieve? In chess, one of the most important things is that your move have a purpose. Jimakos, thank you for rating with a party of 18. Hope you had a great stream. Also, shout out to Jimakos. So we're just learning the Grand Prix and understanding the little tweaks and exciting bits of this opening. So Queen h4, f5. Yes, Queen h4, f5. GMC Graph is asking why not f5. Both is fine. In fact, we're just trying to understand how to play chess and how to form plans in this type of structure. So it's not that f5 is bad, it's not that e5 is bad. We're looking for ideas, and from that we can actually see the full picture. Jimako saying, have a good stream, man. Go for a daily walk. Well, I will do. Hope you do as well. So far we have this idea of e5, f5, queen h4, but mostly we want to activate that c1 bishop, correct? And if we want to activate that bishop, we'll get the chance to pasture this knight on h6. But before we get into a big spiel, what are the positives of black's position. And that will also help you to find the right moves. By the way, if you're new here, we do such lectures time to time. Here's our YouTube link if you want to look at past lectures. The bishop pair, exactly. Papa Bell. The pawn structure is more compact, yes, because white has more pawn islands and these pawns are doubled. On the other hand, it does give us this control of the d5 square. Now, I told people earlier on that we're actually not afraid of the triple pawns because this bishop will be very annoying in the long run and it's very hard to get close to these pawns. h6 takes 6. So if we know that black's biggest asset is that bishops on d7 and g7, what should be our goal as white? Now, chess is a zero-sum game, and by then, you should note that if your opponent has some vices, you might want to take them away. Nullify them or trade them off. Scone juice, exactly. And by that, actually, the moves that we would be trying to make here with white should be obvious. So what should white be playing in the upcoming moves? Also remember that this knight is a little bit awkward on h6. Gabarovich says, hardest part to think with principles or break it, very hard to learn it, I think when and which. It's not that hard. We already know that your opponent has the bishop pair. You want to exchange it off. Of course, if you get one of the bishops off the board, there's no more bishop pair. So should we play e5 or f5? Which one will help us achieve the goal of exchanging off a pair of bishops? Obviously f5. And now it's easy to decide between which move you want to play, e5 or f5. e5, if you just want to attack, that's fine, that's a good attacking move, as suggested by Gaborovich. But f5 is the more logical one, as then we can go queen h4, put pressure on that knight, and in the long future, we might get the chance to exchange off the g7 bishop. And when we do so, then we will get the advantage, because no longer will black have the bishop pair, and we still will have the central control. And in early on, I talked about this, but I'm going to repeat it once more. We have one pawn in the center, but don't forget about peripheral pawns, which also put pressure on critical squares. So in fact, white is the one in big control here. Bishop f6 is not a great idea because this knight will be undefended, and after f5 that will be a big target. You would stop queen at h4 but would leave your pieces a little loose. Also, you might run into e5 with a tempo. And the other thing is, whenever your opponent gets you and gives you the chance to attack immediately, so let's say black plays bishop f6, now I would consider e5. Why? Well, because I hit the bishop immediately. If they take, well, my bishop gets active, I get the central control, this is under pressure and the bishop has to move. The bishop moves back. I can take e takes d6, and you can't capture back because your king is still in the middle. So this is how the situation changes. If you can win a tempo, use that chance. If you can't win the tempo, just go f5 and go with your normal plan. So, here Wojtasek was really worried about f5, and he came up with a very interesting idea. Played f5 himself. Very original and sort of annoying for white because we wanted to play f5 and activate the bishop. Now because there's a pawn in front of it, our bishop on c1 is sort of suffering. But again, if we're playing white here, what should we be playing? Squishy, thank you for following. I think I missed that. Again, we can start from chess principles and then concrete play. Start with chess principles, concrete play. So f5. Can we consider taking on f5? Chat, what do you think? And dear viewer. I would open up the middle, says Belzesub, since his king is in the middle and we have the queen lined up already. Desert Storm, many people say e5. So, first off, always assume that your opponent is trying to achieve something. Hello, A Gambit. So when black played f5, it stopped us from playing f5 ourselves. B, it has an idea. Now, is this an open position, chat? Open or closed? It's a closed position. So if we take on f5, this might become more opened. Who does that feature and help out? Who does e takes f5 favor? We have knights. Opponent has bishops. The dude with the bishops, of course, A Gambit. So knight takes f5. Not only we would activate our opponent's knight, might even get this juicy outpost on d4, but now this bishop has a reign and is dominating. After bishop c6, there might be x. And there would be just a lot of pressure on these critical squares, and I kind of assume that white would not enjoy this a whole heck of a lot. So if we don't take on f5, we've only got one more option, and is e5. In general, when you have the knights, you want to have a close position. That's not the only thing e5 achieves. What else does e5 achieve? So Belzesub is saying, but his king is still in the center. Isn't that a reason to open up the position? Well, yeah, that's what you have to think about. So obviously we don't reject e takes f5 on the get-go, but we realize if we take knight takes f5, and it turns out we don't have enough attackers on the king to win the game. If we would have enough attackers, of course we would consider taking on f5, but sadly we don't. Also, we realize that this knight on h6 is kind of dim. But after we take, this knight actually has a good route to d4. So then we decide, okay, we can't win the game by taking and mating. We don't have enough firepower. In fact, we would need to have f5 in and then we can start attacking. But after f5, we just don't have enough firepower to blast through. So we have to be more strategical, and e5 is this strategical move. Strategical move, keeping the position closed. Thank you for the follow, Scone Juice. Okay, bishop e6. Simple move, activating the bishop, hitting on the c4 pawn. b3. Again, which side would you take here, dear chat? Just by the look of it. White says, literally everyone. Papa Bell, Puzzle Sub, Desert Storm Carl, Roadrunner87, thank you for the follow. Black, you like the challenge, staccato or vibrato? I remember your question from previous, and I'm going to come back to your knight c6 question. Next game. So white is clearly active at the moment, and that is a good observation. We have more active pieces, we own these central squares, and that is why my sneaking suspicion is that white is better. But black has the bishop there. So let's get our Karpovian minds out a little bit. How can we exchange that g7 bishop in the future? Meanwhile, I hydrate. Because water is important. Again, is think, wait, we can think about exchanging that bishop? Sure thing, long-term thinking, long-term thinking. So there's something magical in chess, Desert Storm Carl. It does not really need to be your move to devise a plan as white, especially because this position is very strategical. So there's not much going to happen anyways. It's not that we're going to lose something. Black still needs to castle, connect two rooks. So we will have ample time to get a position where we can exchange off bishop. Yep, stick the bishop on the same diagonal. Okay, bishop b2. And then how can we proceed from there? Give me an example. How can we exchange this b2 bishop to the g7 one? I mean, there's some steps you need to take just to get it done. So we would get knight a4, take on d6, exchange those bishops, and then there would be many pawn weaknesses in black's camp and no more bishop pair. And that's actually what you're playing for. Knight f7, e takes d6, queen takes d6. Now, e takes d6 was important because let's say white plays something funky like bishop d2, which would be a bad idea anyways. Why not put it on b2? It is your time to shine. Random moves. Show me some cheap tricks. Black to move and do a nice little cheapo. It was black to move, Squishy. And it's still black to move. And we rotate the board. There is a nice little tactical trickery over here. It's black to move. And it's cheapo time. There are always tricks possible in chess, and I agree in the sense with random moves, cheapos are a good way of improving. But also, don't forget, strategy is the name of the game. That's the other reason some people love chess. I mean, I do love chess for both of the reasons. Strategy is also one of them. D takes c5, f takes c5. And black has a beautiful, beautiful little Zwischenzug. A little tricky idea. That's knight takes c5. Knight takes c5. I take your piece. Thank you. And queen d4 check. Taking the pony. And if you block, I can just take the knight. And I say bye-bye to you. So here's the trickery. You always have to look out for these nasty little tactical tricks. McShane didn't want any of that. So played e takes d6. E takes d6, bishop b2. And now white has a good bishop. But this bishop on e6 is an honorary French bishop. Castle, rook f2. Just blocking any tricks. There's always knight takes d4. But you never know. You never ever know if there's something gonna happen over there. So he plays rook f2. You can take on f4. d6 is hanging. Also, white is planning to double up on the e7 pawn. So now strategically, this position is very nice for white. Why? Because that's a potential target and white has just better pieces. So if we manage to exchange off this bishop on b2 on g and the one on g7, we will have these very good squares for our knights and targets as well. So there's some good chances here for advantage. Rook e8, knight b5, b6, and first rule of the day, we achieved it. a4, a5, rook d1. So if we're comparing the quality of pieces, you will note that this bishop is just much worse against these knights. Why? Because these knights will have these outposts, and that bishop really doesn't have a target. Can you tell me why that bishop is so locked in? Why is that e6 bishop so locked in? What is the reason? And in fact, that was a very conscious way of playing by Luke McShane. Pawns on the light squares, exactly. Because of these pawns, these Tetris pawns, this white bishop really doesn't have any target. And sadly for black, there's no way this bishop can go to f5. It would dream of going to e4, but it will take a billion years to get there. So this bishop is stranded and doesn't really have a target. And it's due because of the closed nature of the position, these pawns and the f4 pawn. Otherwise, the bishop might be able to go to f5 and pester the c2 pawn. But in this specific case, that's why this bishop is so bad, and we shall see how McShane uses it to full effect. Bishop c8, a very passive move, but tries to play e5 or something. Rook e2, and now white goes ultra positional. Gets the rook on the files, like you always should, attacks the e7 pawn, but also makes sure that the e5 post is under control. And if you have that e5 square under control, you are going to win this game, my friend. Why? Because we can dream of another endgame that is so famous. Dear chat, dear viewers, what type of endgame I'm referring to here? Good knight versus bad bishops. Exactly random moves. So what should be our next few moves? If we know that. So now we have the idea we want to get rid of that f7 knight. How can we get rid of that knight? So first you set up a hypothesis, then you solve it. It's a good thing that we already know what we want to achieve, but now we have to have an execution in place. Otherwise, they're not going to give the point for free. Just a second. Knight e5. You just want to exchange off this knight, and then black will be saddened with that terrible, terrible bishop on c8. So Desert Storm Carl is asking, what about queen f2, rook d5? Well, that's a plan. You can try to win the pawn that way, but from a strategical point of view, knight e5, knight takes f7 is superior. Why? Because your plan is very temporary. Your plan is more reflective of, I want to win a pawn right now, and if I succeed, I succeed. If I fail, I fail. Now, the position is so good for white. If we manage to just do that strategic exchange, you're actually just much, much better. No question about it, and there is no question if it happens, you succeed. With queen f2, rook d5, there's a 50-50 chance that it actually works, because when you play queen f2, it's blindingly obvious you want to take my c5 pawn. That doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong, but you are actually going for a pawn that could be defended. And sometimes it's much, much wiser to go for the strategic approach. And because we can't really be sure if we're winning there, that's why we should go for knight e5, knight f7. e6, knight g5. Well, that's another option. A little bit risky, but just a reminder, this is actually a time where Wojciech and McShane was very young. So knight g5 might not be the best, but it's a very exciting move. In fact, I'm sure most of you love this because it sort of puts pressure on the f7 knight and kind of wink wink nudge nudge, trying to bother that h7 pawn, going matey matey mate. Rook d8, rook takes d8, knight takes e6. So Wojtaszek decides to give up the pawn. If takes, however, again, that bishop becomes miserable because we own the c5 square. Black has no time to go e5, e4, and once we infiltrate, it's game over. Strategically, that bishop is just too bad. So Wojtaszek goes for the desperado rook d8. Rook takes, knight takes e6, bishop takes e6, rook takes e6. So there's always a big question. And here, this was a big question whether to take on e6 or f7. Which one would you do, chat? Would you take on e6 or take on f7? You would channel your inner Yasser and grab the pawn. Squishy, we don't know for sure. Meaning the time situation, we're not sure what times they had. Desert Storm, that's kind of the question. So in any case, White decided to take on e6. Although knight takes f7 could be very technical, as Black's bishop is still so bad and this king is kind of drafty on the dark squares. This can be also pretty bad. Probably this is also near winning for White. For someone who is more technical, might even consider knight takes f7. But okay, why not take the pawn? But in fact, when we take the pawn, always be conscious of one thing. You win a pawn, true. But takes. What happened to that c8 bishop? It's gone. There's no more bad bishop, and it was only worth a pawn. So if Wojtaszek manages to build a fortress, then this trick of rook d8 was well worth it. So always think about this. Whenever you sacrifice or give up a pawn, sometimes you get these sort of compensation. You can get rid of a bad piece for a pawn. And those are not necessarily bad trades. Here, for example, Wojtaszek will get good counter chances. Well, is it drawing? Probably not, but does it give chances for him? Yes, it does. No, it was bad permanently. Pretty permanently, it was terrible, Bowser sub. Endless Reach, thank you for the follow. But there is this very, very nice move, rook d1. Probably missed by McShane. Takes, h takes, queen takes d1. And now comes the moment when White is just going to cash on in. We're up some pawns, so what should be our next steps? Exchange pieces, exactly, Desert Storm Carl. So let's see how McShane does it. Or trade queens, yes. Queen e6, king f2. Now, this is a queen ending, but there's an ending attached to it. So you've got to bring your king closer. Always bring your king closer when you play an endgame. G5, queen d5. Why did black want to play g5 and white didn't take on g5? Well, white didn't take on g5. Let me answer this tricky question. Because the knight would hop into e4, and if the queen and knight can cooperate really well, then there would be ample counterplay. So the reason why Max Shane played queen d5 here is to avoid such activity from black. Also hopes to exchange queens. Queen h6, fg now, queen h4. The big difference is if knight g5, I can take on f5 and you are just lost. Queen h4, king e2. Running towards safety. Again, a positive of this pawn structure, it's very safe and your king can often hide against checks on a2. Queen takes h2, queen takes b7, gobbling all them pawns. King g6, queen c6, queen f3, over defending. One of the things that's important whenever you have better position is to make sure that everything you have is defended. It's very important because you blunder a pawn, you might just lose the advantage. f4, queen h3. You're up a pawn, let's exchange queens. Queen g1, of course. Wojtasek says, no, I don't want to. Knight c3, and suddenly your king is getting in danger. Knight d6, just stopping that. Queen f3, setting up this check and preparing knight e4 ideas. Queen c1, king d3. And surprisingly enough, this king is fairly safe now because the structure gives stability. Queen g1, queen takes f4, check, and black resigned because takes, check, and it's forked down. So what did we learn from this game? Dear chat, tell me your views. Because we definitely learned something here. Level sub, don't be so harsh on yourself. Formulating a plan, yes. And it's just simple stuff. If you remember, close positions, knights. So you want to keep the position closed if you have knights. If you have bishops, you want to open it up as quickly as possible. Desert Storm Carl says order of plans, position, then targets based on advantages. Yes. Very good. Sub, for me, new was to go after the bishop, meaning exchanging off the bishop pair. You only target big pawns. See, sometimes you can target bishops as well. Alright, so let's go back to move 1. And we're going to look at one of the heroes of the Grand Prix attack. And his name is Emil Sutovsky. What's kind of exciting, whenever you're looking at games and ideas, always try to look for heroes of the game. Now, Emil Sutovsky, Grandmaster, very well known in chess circles, he is famous for ferocious attacking chess. So it is just natural we choose him as one of our idols and heroes of this opening. So let's see 2 of his games. This one is against Zhu Chen, And the other one will be against none other than the legend, the World Championship challenger. You figure it out. Okay, so let's go e4, c5, knight c3. Now, there is actually some added positive to this move, knight c3. That is being a very flexible move. White can still transpose back to the Najdorf if he so wishes to do so. Or just continue Grand Prix style, which is the topic of our day. Hello Romeo XT, and hello everybody who just joined. We are looking at the Grand Prix attack, and if you want to see and notified about these lectures and /streams, check out our Discord and Facebook. So e4, f4, g6, knight f3, bishop c4. Thank you for the follow, Chessinators. So here Staccato Vibrato asked bishop b5 check, as we've seen in the earlier Mac-Shane game. He asked, why not knight c6? And I can give you a simple answer. The knight on c6, we can't take it. B takes c6, and you'll have a doubled pawn. Castles, let's say knight f6, d3. And if you think about this, black does have the bishop pair. On the other hand, this bishop is almost locked in. After h3, it will have absolutely no targets because it's hitting the wall of pawns. Also, once black plays d5, the c5 pawn becomes a real target and a weakness. So that is the main point of white's concept. So whenever black would play knight c6, you would just take it, castle, d3, and go queen e1, queen h4, and f5, wanting to exchange off this g7 bishop, which is relatively the strongest piece in this position. But let's go back to the game. So here, instead of bishop b5, which is playable, Sutovsky played bishop c4. So the big difference is white immediately puts pressure on f7. Wings of knight, thank you for following. Knight c6, castles, knight f6, d3, castles, queen e1. So again, the plan is very simple. White wants to go queen h4, f5, and bishop h6. And if white manages to do that, there'll be a pretty good position. Hello there, Fortuna Chess Coach and Wings of Knight. Joining at a good time, because we're just looking at one of the heroes of Grand Prix attack, and that is Emil Sutovsky. Knight d4, and here comes the big question. How should we react to this move? And this is important. Knight d4 is a very concrete way of playing by black. Black is pressuring the c2 pawn and bothers the f3 knight. And if you remember and recall the game I showed you earlier on, this shouldn't be too hard. Obviously, we might think that we could go queen h4, but that pawn is worth a lot. If we lose that pawn, there'll be problems. Belso Sub is saying, I think we should get rid of the knight and not let it hang around for too long. Very good idea. So if we take that knight, and I kind of agree, we should get rid of it, then there would be c takes d4, attacking our knight. So let's just make it. That's what happened. And we need to decide where to put that knight on c3. This is actually an important moment of the game. So I see many knight e2 moves, but what's very, very important, if you're looking at a position and see one move, always consider other options as well. This is very important. And indeed, wings of knight is correct. Knight d5. Knight e2 is bad for the reason why knight d5 is good. What's wrong with knight e2? Knight e2 is not a good move here. So knight d2, that's a bad move. How can black try to take advantage? Remember, the most important squares are still these four. If black can take control of those or any of those squares, black will be doing fine. A-Gambit is saying, oh wow, that felt like such an autopilot move. Maybe that's why chess coaches keep saying autopilot is bad. Exactly. Boom, d5. Knight takes d5. And if you ask me, black is better. And I'm going to give you a breakdown why. Do you see any white pawns in these four squares? No, you don't. Does black have a pawn on a critical square? Yes, there is. On d4 and a mighty knight on d5 supported by the lady. You might even think about knight e3 jumps in the future. So in fact, black is better here. So one little slip and it's gone. So therefore knight d5 is a very strong move. Mentioned by wings of knight, you're stopping any d5 breaks. Knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, queen c7. So let's stop here. Black is going to play queen c7. In this position, what should we be aiming for? So if you go e6, d5, you often get these pawns a little weakened. But we'll come back to this structure later on. So what should be white's big plan over here? Queen h4, okay, interesting idea. Romeo xt, what is your big plan? So this is more of a closed position. So we want to get strategic over here. And because the position is closed, we can kind of anticipate our future moves. What will our future moves be? f5, definitely. And then what? Hey, Peter Balkush. So give me moves. Give me moves. First, you do a hypothesis, and then you come up with real living moves. You can't go without it. Otherwise, you don't give me a solution. So I kind of like the idea. We do want to go for the mate. Queen h4, f5, bishop h6 is very good. Now, wings of knight is mentioning c3, which is sometimes an idea, but you are kind of activating this bishop. Now, one of black's problem is that his bishop is blunted by his own pawn on d4. So c3 was sort of helping black to activate that guy. But as chat mentions, of course, queen h4, f5, bishop h6 is a great idea. In fact, someone mentioned the rook lift. Oh, it was a gambit. That's also possible. You can go rook h3, f5, and because this bishop will be closed in, you can even go rook f3, rook h3, and attack the h7 pawn. So let's take a look what happened. So Zhu Chen, as far as I know, she's a famous grandmaster. Queen c7, f5. So here, Stovsky is saying, okay, I'm going all in. I have a big attack. And Zhu Chen believes him. e6, bishop b3, e takes f5, e takes bishop g5. This was also an option, I thought. Bishop g5, fe, queen e4. Many things have changed here. But for the positive, we have pressure on the f7 pawn. And this bishop still has a problem finding a good square. And plays bishop f5. And this is our moment to shine, chat. This just became a gambit. Exactly. So, I mean, the next move is blindingly obvious, but let's try to understand why is it such a great move. So rook f5 obviously is the move that is going to be played, but what is the idea behind it? Rook sacrifice as black's rook on a8 is kind of worthless, and we can put the rook on a1. Kind of. Those pieces are pretty bad. Rook takes f5, g takes, queen takes f5. And if you're familiar with history, just fan, it's not working at the moment. So queen takes f5. There's just not enough space to get through. Just like in the Greek-Persian War, you can't really cross there. It's just not wide enough for these heavy pieces for the rook. Also, what can we say about king safety? Which king is safer, chat? More kingside attack, definitely, primogenitor. So obviously, the king on g1 is much safer because there are no potential targets. And in fact, if we can get rid of... Oh, delete that, of course. If we can get rid of that g7 bishop, then this will be a very good position. So bishop f6 would be an idea. Queen c5 was played, trying to exchange the queens. And now, again, we've got to come up with a good attacking plan. Is it an option to take on c5 for white? No, we're down material and it improves opponent's structure. Exactly. So we're down exchanges. I mean, down an exchange, that is. And if we know that, what would be our only option to win the game? It's simple. Checkmate. Checkmate is the name of the game. So I see Queen G4 suggested. Okay. What is the plan behind Queen G4? Hello, Fred Camaro. Bishop D5, okay. So between Bishop D5 and Queen G4, which one would you choose and why? G spades, you're saying pin or attack the bishop. What do you mean by that? With Queen G4. Yeah, you can go Queen G4, go Bishop F6, and have very, very aggressive mating ideas. Now, this Queen on C5 is actually very useful. It puts pressure on our pieces and might actually join the defense. We don't want that to happen. And as Fortuna chess coach points out, Bishop D5 does cut off the queen and have ideas of Bishop E4. And that's a very big move by Sutovsky. Not only does White have threats against the king, but a future hope for a battery. Rook E8. And here we do have to come up with a plan. We're down an exchange, so we can't wait around for too long though. But if we can find the right plan, we might actually win the game. First off, the F7 is a potential target. So White played Rook F1. Now, as we already have sacked the exchange, we do have to rely on attacks. So B4 is an interesting idea, but the problem is that Black would be coming in quite quickly with Queen C3 after B4 and Rook E1 check. And if we don't checkmate, we're actually just losing. So this is actually a very double-edged moment. Rook F1 is very good. Actually played Bishop F4. In fact, I would want to play Rook F1 myself, be honest, and just attack that pawn. But Sutovsky played Bishop F4, King H8, Rook F1 now. Not sure about that. Both moves seem legitimate. I see. So he was probably worried of Rook E5. And that's the problem. You can't take there because you lose the queen or the bishop, and it's just game over. That's the reason he played Bishop F4. Stopping Rook E5. King H8, Rook F1, bringing in the rook, maybe even planning this Rook F3, Rook H3 plan. Rook E2, H4. Why does White play H4? That's the big question. Is that just creating a luft for the king? He wants to push it all the way up to H5, H6, and if this bishop is gone, there would be potential mating patterns on G7. Rook takes C2, H5. So let's say if Black takes on B2, simply H6, Bishop E5, takes, and just because we have a pawn on H6, the next move will be checkmate. So these pawn pushes are actually very, very good. No wonder this is the legendary Larsen pawn. Thank you for the follow, Esker16. So black decides to go and play h6 herself. And seemingly, the attack has died down. Seemingly. But Sutovsky is out there and plays a very, 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 very beautiful idea. White to move and win. And also, do tell me what is the point behind it. So we're kind of sad we couldn't push the pawn all the way to h6, which would have been spectacular. So we need to change plans. So whenever you're looking for mating ideas, always decide where the mate would land in the future. Exactly. h7 square is the critical square right there. Fred Camaro, so earlier on, the big whole and mating concept was on g7 because of h5, h6, and then if the bishop is liquidated, we have queen f6, queen g7. But after h5, h6, this becomes a real target. b4. Okay, and what if I just go queen c8 and bother your lady? So you don't want that. Bishop e4, I would exchange the queens. Go bishop e5. Bishop e5. Probably I have counter sacrifices on g2. So here, takes. If you take, I have queen e5. And you don't have time to mate me on h7. Always look for counter tricks. If bishop takes, what if I just take it back? G spades. Yeah, but then I block it. So takes, check, bishop g7, and your attack is kind of running out of fuel a little bit. So the big move is boom. Your queen, your rook is under attack. There's a big problem brewing. Queen takes here. And who's gonna save you from this checkmate? Nobody. And that is the big issue. You'll save me, Romy XD. Yeah. And again, the point, this wouldn't work without the help of the Larsen pawn. Because if queen g6, I can take it, h takes g6. So h4, h5, h6 was a legendary idea by Sutovsky. The resign button might save you, yes. So normally if the pawn wouldn't be on h5, queen g6 would block the mate. But here it's not possible because h takes g6. So Zhu Qian played queen c8 and then was suffering. So you can see white has just a much better bishop. This bishop is basically a pawn. Nothing great. Yeah, this is a type of game you'd love to play yourself. Insane, right? I mean, that's why we look at the Grand Prix. Queen c8, queen f7, and that's the problem. This bishop is just monstrous and the king is in constant danger. Rook c7, queen g6, rook e7, bishop e4, queen g8. When you have to play queen g8, you know things are going bad. Rook c1, hello. Even if you go here, hello. You can't even take me because I mate you on h7. Big problems. Bishop f8, queen f6, queen h4, takes, and white is up a pawn, a much better bishop, and white is going to win. Rook c8. One of the important things whenever you get into these opposite colored endgames is to activate your pieces. Piece activity is the most important part of this game. Rook f7. Now king g7 would run into h6, h7. You can't take because the bishop is hanging. So rook f7, h6. Again, because of the opposite colored position, it'll be very hard to deal with that pawn. Rook f6, g4. Still can't take because your bishop is in danger. b6, bishop f5, a5, a4. Just fixing the structure. h7, king g2, king f3. And black resigned, seeing that white is just going to collect all the pawns Pac-Man style. And you can move the rook away. Let's say b3. You can move because I queen and I take the f8 bishop. So there's nothing good going on around here. And after king f3, king e4, seeing that all those pawns are going to be lost, white won the game. So this was the first lecture on the Grand Prix attack. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I really hope this was fun. This was the first lecture. I'm going to do another one. We still yet to look at Nigel Short's game, which is very important, and I'm going to and plan to look at it in the future, as that was the one that actually made people interested in the Grand Prix attack, namely the game between Short and Galfond. But that is for our next Grand Prix lecture. Again, if you want to join us and get these ideas out, want to know when these lectures happen, join our Discord. That is something that you might want to check out. And now I am going to pass on the torch to a different streamer. And I hope that you guys got a bit of a hang of this opening and you will play it in the future. With that, I say bye-bye.